Hi guys, I'm Feldbacher, co-founder of WePlay, and yeah, I'm going to show you how to develop for multiple platforms actually, and then give you some best practices, what we had in the last 10 years for mobile app development, native app development for iOS and Android, and the past 5 years, our best practices and learnings developing mobile apps on iOS and Android with Qt. So essentially what the goal is in mobile app development is to give the user really a native user experience. So the app should feel like a native app with a single source code, single code base across platforms, no matter the screen size, screen density, screen resolution. And we've done this as a best practice app with a Qt World Summit app that we've developed. So there's actually 2 World Summit apps in the app stores for iOS and Android. So if you open up your Android or iOS device and go to the app stores now and search for QtWS or Qt World Summit, there's 2 apps showing up. And the app developer us is, I'm referencing now a lot in this talk because it's kind of a best practice of what you can do cross-platform to look native across platforms. So first of all, what you want to keep in mind is to make your app density independent, which means essentially that the bigger the screen gets, the more information you can actually show. So the bigger that the device gets, the more info you can show. But what you do not want, for example, is to scale buttons. So the buttons would get bigger, the bigger the device is. But you should always have like the same physical size of buttons, of list items, no matter what kind of device it is. If it's a phone or a tablet, it should always be the same physical size. So in WePlay, we have like 2 kind of functions that support you with this. One is DP, a density independent function for like rectangles or list items. And then there's one for font sizes. That function is called SP, similar to the Android naming convention. Cool thing there is that it also takes into account the user settings of the Android or iOS font device. So for people who have like problems with reading or stuff like that and have like a bigger font size, this is also taken into effect in the function that we are using. If you put this one step further, if you have like really a lot of screen estate, like for example on tablets, what you can do there is to have like a master detail view, where you have on the left-hand side an overview of the talks in the conference app, and on the right-hand side you can show the detail view. Ideally, and this is what we have achieved in this app here, is that you do not want to have like separate code bases, but only one source code that covers both use cases for both bigger screens like tablets, also for smartphones. And with the WePlay components, you can do this. So this is really just a single source code that works across tablets and phones. And finally, and I think most importantly, you want to really have a native user interface and a native user experience. And this is very different on iOS than on Android. On iOS, for example, for navigating between pages, you have a swipe back gesture going back to the previous page, whereas on Android you have a physical back button, which is also the reason why in most Android applications the back button is on the top, because you don't really touch it, but you press the back button on the bottom. Also, the navigation elements on iOS is a bottom tab bar usually, whereas on Android you have this navigation drawer that you can swipe out. So all of this is really very different in platforms, but what you do not want is to duplicate this in code. So this is essentially what we are providing with the WePlay components. There's even a lot more differences when it comes to a user interface. If you're having a look at the list views, for example, the list views feel different on iOS than on an Android device. The bouncing is different. The scroll view indicator on the right is different. Also, the separators between the list items are different between platforms. This might seem like small details, but the user should not be able to tell if this is like a QML app or if it's a native app, right? So that's also one more thing. Or when you're transitioning between pages, on Android, pages pop up from the bottom, whereas on iOS it's coming left or right. So that's also a detail, but in total this sums up. So how to actually make an app like this? Well, this app we fully created with QML only and using the WePlay Apps SDK, and it's fully open source as well on GitHub, as well as part of the WePlay SDK. So essentially WePlay started 4 years ago as a gaming framework, a game engine, which is extending Qt for games, 2D and 3D games. And essentially it moves since 2 years now also for supporting mobile apps. with Qt and QML. So it kind of extends the Qt quick controls and adds a lot more components on top of this. In total, there's more than 150 components in QML that you can use. It really integrates into the existing Qt toolchain very easily. So you have a Qt creator, you have integrated documentation, you have auto-completion like you're used to and from QML components. You get even this own tab on the left-hand side, and it's quite easy to install. You can just open the maintenance tool, open our repository to download the packages, or go on our website and download it from the website directly. So all of the samples that we did, not only the Showcase app, but also there are several other apps and games available, are all open source as part of the SDK. And you can browse all of these from an application called the vBlay Sample Launcher, which is also installed as part of our components. So I'll just give you a quick glance at what this is looking like. So you can start this from either from Qt Creator or from the Start menu here. And what this application does is it shows all the different apps and game demos that we did. So you can browse through all of these, select one of them. Here's the gaming site. The app examples are like smaller code snippets, and these are the full demo apps and games. And if you found one that is like a good route for your own projects, you can just start it and run it like that. So what you see here, that you can already change platforms at runtime, which is a pretty cool and useful feature, and simulate different platforms like that. And you can also change the sizing and see how it affects your application. So what you can also see here is this is a list item that there are, for example, swipeable list options, or when you're having a look at the lists, there's a loading indicator items, or there's pull to refresh elements and components that you can use in list items. Also, if you change the platform now here, you also see, okay, this is the Android style with a native navigation drawer look and feel, whereas on Android you have this navigation bar on the bottom. And also if you're pushing other pages, you'll see that this is native iOS or Android styling. What you can also do is test out this master detail view feature here. So as soon as the app got enough screen real estate, changes automatically to this master detail view without needing to have like separate code branches for tablets or smartphones. And the best of all, well, all of these demos, like I said, are open source. So if you find this demo useful, you can just click the source code button. Then Qt Creator is opening up. And you can run the project. And inspect the source code right in Qt Creator and change that, run it again. Just regular development experience like you're used to. So I run this app now from Qt Creator here. So the specialty of all this is the whole applications. So all the demos are written in QML only, so there's no C++ code involved. And it's 100% the same source code. So there's no if-def branches for iOS or Android, but you can fully reuse the whole source code for both platforms. So essentially how we extend the Qt quick controls and Qt in general is with this native iOS styling that is not existing in quick controls yet. Native navigation that you have seen, so this is also automatically adjusted. And you get this master detail view out of the box, as well as all the list view modifications that we did, like the native styling of list view, the load more, pull to refresh items, etc. Also, you can change the style at runtime. You have seen this now from the application that I've shown you before, but you can even do this on the device. So if you're downloading the WorldSubmit app from the App Store from us and go to settings and change between iOS and Android, you'll see that the styling is adopted to simulate the different platform. We were wondering if Apple allows us to submit this to the App Store, because yeah, it's kind of tricky sometimes. But as long as you make sure you don't name it Android, it's fine. So it's called custom on iOS. Pretty cool thing is this is very useful for testing, right? Because you don't need to get all the different devices. You can just simulate right while the app is running and simulate different styles. And there is a lot of like more native-like features. For example, the image picker. You can choose either images from camera or from gallery. You can then take these images and upload it to our backend system, which is hosted on Amazon. There's native dialogues available. There's this share sheet available. There's sharing available to all kind of like Facebook, Twitter, sending stuff over messages. This is also in the World Summit conference app. You can, for example, share your session that you find interesting like that. There's routing features available, which opens the native route application, depending if it's iOS or Android. We've used that to route to the venue in the conference app, and a lot more. Like I said, it's more than 150 components. So in general, I see the biggest benefits in mobile app development by using QML, that animations is really simple to do. So one of the demo apps that we've developed is a native like Twitter application, which uses the full Twitter REST API for getting all the data. And it was really simple to do in QML because animating all of this, doing the whole application with the vPlay Apps SDK, it was in fact just 840 lines of code for the whole animation. I'm wondering how much lines of code the Twitter guys needed in native code to do this fade out animation that you can see in the native Twitter app. In QML, that's super easy. Also, if you're doing custom UIs that can look the same on all platforms, that's also really cool for QML. That's what it was made for. It's for rapid prototyping. And even more than that, not for prototyping, but you can take this prototype and then go live with it. And if you have anything native, native look and feel, native UI, then the vPlay Apps SDK helps you to save code on this. In fact, the whole World Summit app that is live in the app stores is just 1,600 lines of code. Having all the features that you can explore there. I've come to that, there's even more than that I've shown so far. And yeah, all the samples that we did, you can download it for free. It's part of the vPlay SDK. So essentially, it's because it's so little source code, it's also very easy to learn. This also has been proven in several developer reports. This one is one with more than 2,000 developers globally, which shows how easy a framework or platform was to learn for developers. And vPlay and Qt scored really high in this rating because it typically takes just a day or maybe a few days for a developer to learn QML and the QML language. Even more than that, because it's so code efficient, you need very little lines of code to do a lot of things. In terms of time savings, QML also has a very good rating. In fact, we scored #1 and Qt #3, which is really cool. So in the second part of the talk, I want to emphasize more of the general tips for mobile app development that in our experience from the past 5 years of Qt mobile app development popped up. So I'd like to start with the first one. I've highlighted this before, and yeah, I think QML is not only for prototyping, but essentially I would suggest it to use it for a whole app development lifecycle, because in the end you're saving a lot of time. We've done comparisons with projects written in C++, where part of it is written in C++, and the code savings that you have range from between like 30% up to 90% of code that you can save. And in most of the times, QML is easily fast enough to do what you want. So I see mostly C++ in mobile app development, mostly if you have legacy code written in C++ that you want to reuse, or if you have really high performance requirements that you need to do in C++. On the other hand, our components, they are mostly in C++ because they ought to be fast. Similarly, the new quick controls 2 are written in C++ compared to the old quick controls 1, which were in QML. So this is where C++ has still its place, but I think for the UI development, for coding the logic of the app, QML is just the perfect weapon. One more advantage you get with QML that it's not compiled, but just interpreted at runtime. So when you're developing it on desktop, you can just rerun the application if you're not using resources, but deployment folders approach. Yeah, which also saves, again, time. If you do this like 100 times a day, every second counts. And if you take this step one step further, there's a project live on the Qt repositories called QML Live. Who of you guys have heard of that? Which is pretty cool, actually, because what it does is code reloading of QML files without need to redeploy to mobile devices or even on your desktop PC. So essentially what you can do is you just save the QML file and you see the results immediately on your application reloaded. Just like web developers are used to, but we can also have this in QML because it's integrated. We've been starting more research and work on this recently, and if you go to the website vplay.net/QML live coding, what you'll find there is that you can enter QML code on the website, and after downloading a QML live app, you will see this QML code live update on the application. So there's even no need to install any SDK. There's actually you just need to install the mobile app, and then you can fully work in your browser, which is, I think, a really cool thing for new users, new to QML, to explore what they can do with it without installing the old Qt frameworks. But it's also benefiting the continuous development work of your projects. So we'll be putting more effort into this, and you can expect something about this pretty soon. Well, after you've finished development, it's often quite tedious to get new updates out to your testers. So that's why I'd recommend using a third-party service for this. We have added support for the Hockey app SDK and added support in a way that you can use it as a QML plugin. So there's a range of plugins that we are supplying, and the way this is working is that we are taking a third-party SDK or service, then wrapping it so you can use it from QML. The way how you use it is pretty simple. You just add a one-line import statement, import vplay plugins 1.0, and then you can use this QML item in your application. So source code-wise, this is just like 3 or 4 lines. What you then need to do is on iOS need to add the library, and on Android add it to the Gradle dependencies. But except that, it's really like a 10-minute step, and you have like full integration of beta testing. What the Hockey app plugin actually does is it notifies the users there's a new update available, there's a new beta version available, then can then automatically download this new version, and you don't have to push it to all the testers manually. You don't have to push it to all devices, but they get a notification and know, okay, there's a new update, I can test this now. Even more, there's crash reporting in the Hockey app plugin, so whenever your app crashes, you can see this in the web dashboard of the Hockey app website. So I highly recommend adding this plugin to your mobile app. Second, after you published your app, there's always something that you might have forgotten. And if you wanted to release a new update on iOS, it takes 1 to 4 days. Ideally, if they let you through the review process immediately. So what we recommend in a mobile app that you publish is to always add some kind of like remote loaded code or data that you can show when the app is starting. So with that, for example, you can test different ad settings to maximize the revenue within your mobile application, or you can test prices of your in-app purchase values. And the cool thing with that is that you don't need to update the new version of your app, but you can just change this on the web dashboard, and then these values are published immediately to all your users of the mobile application. So there's several plugins available for mobile ads that we provide, like AdMob or Chartboost. And for in-app purchases, you can use the Qt purchasing APIs or Joomla. And this is really a cool use case for using key value remote loaded data. So we even have an own web dashboard you can use for that, and that's called the component is called Web Storage. You can find the link on the bottom. What you could also use that for, the key value store, is to show a message when the app is starting up. And for example, this message could be that there's a new update of your app available. And for example, Pokemon Go did this, and they had really good update rates because they wouldn't even allow the users to start the app if they are running on the latest version. This is a bit critical, I'd say. Not every app can allow to do that, but in their case it turned out well. And if you're planning for this upfront, then you're on the safe spot if you have like any changes with the preview version. Or you could also, for example, show at app startup just a text for a campaign that you're currently running. If users have to download a new version for that, that's also always, you will lose several users But if you plan for that beforehand, you're on the safe side here. And the most flexible approach actually would be if you add a loader into your main QML file, which then is able to load remote QML data without you needing to update your mobile app. Regarding updates, that's also a really good use case for this tip I have. I would suggest adding at least one of the push notification plugins that we provide. There's actually 3 we're currently offering, and I think OneSignal is the best feature-wise and also in terms of pricing. What you can do with it is, if there is a new update available, you can send a push notification to all the users that are running still on the same version. You can do this even multiple times, like on the first day when you release the new update, on the 3rd day after day 7, etc. So an integration is also really just a matter of minutes. Again, importing the vPlay plugin statement, you can add the OneSignal QML item then in your application, and that's all you need, and you can trigger the push notification server side quite easily. And lastly, to measure all of these steps that you've done is to use analytics from day one, because you especially don't want to miss the analytics from your very first and early users. So at the moment, there's 2 analytics plugins that we're offering, Google Analytics and Flurry. Google Analytics is not only for iOS and Android, but for all supported platforms by Qt, so it's even running on a Raspberry Pi or on desktop platforms. Flurry is for iOS and Android only. And using it is like just using a rectangle QML item, so it's importing the vPlay plugins, it's Google Analytics QML item, then you can say in code, you can write analytics.log event and push the event data to that. What you get out of the box without adding any custom events is you get user statistics about app starts, about daily, monthly active users, about what the session time is, and about the gender, for example, or the age of the users who are using it. So analytics, I think, is really the fastest and simplest way to add. In fact, pushing Google Analytics to your project is more like 2 minutes, and that's on. So there's no way you shouldn't do it. And then last but not least, one tip that I'm often providing is to use some kind of user retention kicker that improves user retention, which is one of the best kickers is gamification elements. So when you're checking out the World Summit app by us, there's a leaderboard, for example, in there, where the users get awarded the more talks they're adding to their agenda. So the more active you are with the app, the higher you rise in the leaderboard. And this motivates users to be more active with the application. Or when you start the application, every time you get a score. And these kind of things just work in mobile apps as well, so not only in games, but also in normal mobile applications. Also, what you get out of the box is user identification, user profiles, so users can upload the profile pictures, they can sync their account with Facebook, they get push notifications when a friend of them is reaching a higher score. And what you can also use is the chat that we've added in the last quarter. So users can chat in a Qt application without leaving the app. So you have like a full-blown Facebook Messenger, so to say, right within your app, which allows your users to communicate with each other. So you can send a message, for example, to the leader of the leaderboard. You can find more details about that at vplay.net/game network. Yeah, so I'd like to extend actually the talk's title from last Knoll this morning, that I think the future of, not only the future is written with Qt, but the future of apps is actually written with Qt. So Qt is really in a really cool state to be used at with mobile applications. And if you're doing anything like mobile or native looking, make sure to give vPlay a try and join the customers that are using it so far. If you want to check out the source code of the conference app, you can just go to vplay.net/QtWS16. There's the full source code there, and you can play with it and use it in your own projects. Cool, so thanks. Yeah.
What's licensing?
It's actually the same like Qt license, so it's free for individuals with less than 50 grand annual turnover. With up to 100K annual turnover, there's an indie license, which is similar to startup license as Qt. And then for enterprises, there's an enterprise license, which is $199 a month. Yeah?
What it sounds like you're doing remote loading a QML on your in the app to update the interface live. How's that working on iOS?
It is working. So we were doubtful as well, but they already have granted apps in the. You just need to be careful in what kind of description you write in the App Store. So you're not allowed to write like code reloading is something you shouldn't write in the description. If you say it's more like scripting, then it's fine. Because you can download the app I was talking about is called QML Live app, and that essentially does code reloading. So it reloads QML code from the browser. We were not sure if they would allow it, but it went through without any problems.
I have two questions. The first is vplay written in Qt Quick Controls 2?
Yeah.
It sounds like it is. Okay. And second thing is, is it just mobile apps, or is there a framework for desktop apps too?
Yeah, there's a fallback for desktop.
Okay.
So you can even change the theme and style at runtime, so you can also simulate all of this in your live apps, but there is a fallback for desktop as well.
Okay.
One more quick question. All right, the keynote's starting at 5, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
QML files tend to get bloated. Do you get this? And what's the criteria for extracting them if you do this?
Pretty good question. Code-wise, I'd say like 300 or 400 lines of code. Then as soon as it starts to get too much to scroll or too complicated to read, I would split it up. Or essentially, if you think this component might be useful in another project, then split it up into a separate Qt component. It's more like regular object-oriented approach, I'd say.